Welcome. In this video of Inkpot, we will be talking about the efficiency of monopoly. First, let's discuss the concept of efficiency. So we had talked about quantifying or measuring welfare in one of the previous units. So we measure economic welfare in terms of economic surplus, and we had defined economic surplus as the sum of producers and consumer surplus. So consumer surplus is the difference between the price paid and the willingness to pay, and producer surplus is the price received minus the difference between the price received and the cost of, or the marginal cost of production, or the minimum willingness to accept. We had said that an efficient allocation is the one which maximizes total surplus. So if the total consumers and producers surplus is being maximized, then we have an efficient allocation. Let's try to understand this in a different manner now. So let's say I have 10 rupees to distribute. So when we're talking about an allocation, we are basically talking about a distribution of resources. We are allocating this 10 rupees to different people. So let's say we are allocating it to person A, and one way to allocate this, so let's call this allocation 1, is to give 8 rupees to person A and 2 to person B. The other way to allocate is to give 3 to this person and 6 to this person. So now let's try to understand which of the allocations is efficient. Note that here all the 10 rupees are getting used. We are giving all of the 10 rupees to either of the people. So the sum of this allocation, the sum of what both the people are getting is 10. Here, however, we are giving 3 to one, 6 to the other. So the total that they are receiving is only 9, which means one unit is basically going unallotted, or it is going waste. It's not benefiting anyone. So we define an efficient allocation in which there is no waste. An alternate way to say this is that if we are at an efficient allocation, then we cannot improve the welfare of one person without reducing another person's welfare. So here, since we are already using up all of our 10 rupees, the resources that we have, if I want to give one more rupee to person A, I have to take it away from person B. So this will be called an efficient allocation. 8-2 is an efficient allocation because the only way to make A better off is to reduce B's welfare. However, in this allocation, that's not true. If I want to improve A's welfare, I can actually give him this 1 rupee which is not being used. It's still with me, and I can still allot it to anyone, and I can give it to this person without hurting person B. So this is the way we define efficiency. An efficient allocation is the one from which there is no further scope for improvement. We have already reached the most efficient or no wastage allocation here, in which we have given 8 and 2 to the people. But here we are wasting some resources, not utilizing all of our resources completely, and therefore there is scope for improvement. One person can be made better off, his welfare can be improved without reducing another person's welfare. Note that a third allocation which gives, let's say, 4 here and 6 here, this is also efficient. Even an allocation which gives 10 to this person and 0, this is also efficient. Of course, you can immediately see that the equity in these three allocations is very different. Here this person B is getting a higher amount, here person A is getting a higher amount, and here person A is getting everything. But if we apply this definition, the only way to make B better off, A को तो और improve कर नहीं सकते, सारे 10 rupees उसी के पास हैं. So if we want to, however, make B better off, then the only way to reallocate is by taking away money from A and giving it to B, in which we will be reducing A's welfare. So it fulfills our definition or criteria of efficiency. Hence this allocation, even though it looks unfair or not very equitable, etc., it is still called an efficient allocation. And each of these allocations 1, 3 and 4 are equally efficient. So we will not say that one allocation is more efficient than the other. Efficiency is not in degrees. So it's not that one is more efficient than the other. We can say 1, 3 and 4 are equally efficient and 2 is not efficient. So again, we are not concerned with the fairness or the distributional equity aspect of any allocation, but purely a total surplus or efficiency criterion is what we are considering. Now, when we talk about efficiency in monopoly, what we're actually doing is comparing the monopoly outcome to the perfectly competitive outcome. So we have already seen in the previous topic that perfectly competitive industry is efficient. Why is efficient? Why is it efficient? You will recall that we said it is because of the P equal to MC criterion being fulfilled. We'll talk about this again in detail so that you remember it again in the next slide. However, we are considering the perfectly competitive firm as the benchmark for us, that we know perfectly competitive industry ensures efficiency in the market. It is the best possible allocation of resources in the market. So we are comparing monopolist outcome to the perfectly competitive outcome. Does a monopolist also allocate resources efficiently, or is the monopolist's outcome, which we saw in the previous video, that his determination of price and output is different from the outcome from the perfectly competitive industry? So is this allocation, is this combination of price and quantity, is that efficient? And if it is not efficient, then how do we measure the deadweight loss that arises due to monopoly, if there is any? So if we are saying it is not efficient, then it means there is some lost surplus. That lost surplus is called deadweight loss, as we had spoken about it in the taxation topic as well. So what kind of deadweight loss do we see in the monopoly case? This is essentially what we'll be discussing in this video. So let's go back and recall the efficiency criterion in perfectly competitive industry. Why do we say that competitive markets are the best way to allocate resources? So again, if you would remember, one of the 10 principles of economics that we looked at in the first unit, one of the principles said that markets are a good way to allocate resources. By a good way, we actually mean this, that perfectly competitive markets allocate resources efficiently. So remember that each competitive firm produces output at following this criterion, right? So we said that P equals MR for competitive firms because they are price takers, and they are using the decision making rule MR equal to MC, and therefore this gives us the P equal to MC as the decision rule for the perfectly competitive industry. Now what is the meaning of this P equal to MC rule? So price is basically the value of the unit at the margin for consumers. People are willing to pay this price, which means that they value that object or that unit of the product that they are buying at this price P. MC is the value at the margin of that unit for producers. Basically, MC captures the minimum willingness to accept for the producer. So for the last unit that is being sold, what does it cost to the producers is what we are trying to identify here, and MC gives us that answer. So marginal cost is the minimum willingness to accept for the producers. So essentially what we are saying is that when P equal to MC condition is being satisfied, then the society's valuation of the good from the producers and the consumers side is getting equated. So we say actually that the price signals are indicating the costs in a true manner. So whatever is the valuation of that last unit that is being sold for the producers in the form of the cost, that is exactly the price that is being paid by the consumers for that unit. As a result, what we see is that so note that supply is basically just the sum of the marginal cost of the firm, or supply of the industry is the sum of the marginal costs of all the firms in the industry. So this demand curve is telling you your value to the consumers. Since it tells you about the willingness to pay, it basically tells you about the value to the consumers, and the marginal cost is telling you the value to producers. Right? So we are saying, we know that the market equilibrium is determined at this point, and we are saying here that P is equal to MC. So P is basically, this information is carried in the demand curve and the MC information is carried in the supply curve. So these two are equal at this point. They are intersecting, these curves are intersecting, and as a result the P equal to MC criterion is being satisfied. So what are we saying? For this unit, let's say the value to the consumer is higher than the value to the producer. Right? We are just measuring the heights at these 2 points. So we are saying the value to the consumer of this first unit, of this marginal unit, is greater than the value to the producer, which means there is a possibility of trading this unit and getting a surplus for both the agents involved. So this much of the surplus will be obtained by the consumers, and this surplus will be obtained by the producer, or it could be any combination of this. Basically, the total surplus will be this difference between the two curves. Similarly, for the next unit, also the valuation of the consumer is greater than the valuation of the producers, and this surplus can be obtained. So we keep on doing this as long as until we reach this Q star, this is Q star here, Q star unit of output, because at this point the valuation to the consumer is exactly same as the valuation to the supplier, and they are basically getting zero surplus. However, it is still not negative. So as a result of all these transactions of these units, the total surplus that is obtained by society is this triangle. If we, however, produce this next unit, then what is going to happen? The cost to the supplier is higher than the cost to the consumer. So producer will say कि I need 5 rupees to sell this next unit क्योंकि मेरा cost ही at least 5 rupees है उसका, and the consumer will say, however, कि I can't pay anything more than 3 rupees for this unit. So therefore then this transaction will not take place. Hypothetically, if it does take place, let's say हम consumer की बात मान लेते हैं and we allow the consumer to pay 3 rupees to get this unit, then what will happen? The producer will essentially lose 2 rupees on the unit that he sells, which means there will be negative surplus in the economy, and therefore this will actually be a negative surplus area which we do not want. So therefore, for maximum surplus or for an efficient allocation, we stop at this intersection point. So diagrammatically, the intersection between demand and supply curves basically tells us that perfectly competitive industry is efficient. Now contrast this to what happens in the monopolistic firm. So let's draw the diagram for that. We have to put the MR and MC curves so that we can identify the monopolist's profit making decision, and we'll put the demand curve to identify the corresponding price. So this is the MR curve with half the intercept as here, and we will have the MC curve like this. So again, a quick revision: MR equal to MC will tell you your Q star, then this Q taken up to the demand curve tells you the price, corresponding price that this Q star output will be sold at. So now what we are left to do is identify the consumer surplus and the producer surplus and see if there is any deadweight loss. Basically, the way we'll define deadweight loss is here: if there is any lost surplus, in the sense of if any consumer is interested in buying the unit at a higher price than the marginal cost but is still not able to do so. Right? So we are saying the monopolist will sell all of these units at a price of P star, and anything beyond Q star he will not sell. Alright, so now let's see this. So for all of these units, the consumers are getting a surplus of these heights. So we define it in the same way: distance between the demand curve and the price paid. So this consumer, he was willing to pay this, but he only had to pay P star, so he gets a surplus of this, and so on and so forth. So this is the entire consumer surplus. Now let's look at the person who is sitting, who basically wants this Q bar unit. This person is willing to pay a maximum of this price for this unit, and this price is actually higher than the marginal cost of that unit. So let's say this is 7 and this maybe it is 5. So this unit, if it is sold, let's say at 6 rupees hypothetically, so this is a hypothetical case that we are taking. Right now we have already said that this Q bar unit is not sold because the monopolist's decision is to sell only Q star units, and anything to the right of it will not be sold. Hypothetically, however, we are saying that let us say that this Q bar unit is sold to the person who has a willingness to pay of 7, and he let's say they negotiate, the monopolist and this person negotiate and arrive at a price of 6 for this unit. So what will be the consumer surplus in that case? It will be 1, 7 minus 6. And what will be the producer surplus in this hypothetical case again? It will be 6 minus 5. So total surplus for this next unit, the Q bar unit, is actually 2. But now let's see what is happening. These 2 rupees of surplus that can be obtained by transacting this unit is not going to anyone, because the monopolist has said, I am not going to sell anything beyond this Q star unit of output, right? So therefore, not just this unit, but all of these units to the right until this point are basically something that can give positive surplus to both the people. So there is some scope for improvement by selling more, but that is not happening for us, right? And that's why then we call this the deadweight loss due to monopoly. That's the way we have defined deadweight loss. अगर कोई surplus जो किसी के पास जा सकता था वो society को में नहीं मिल रहा है, it is being lost to the society, then we call it the deadweight loss. So all of these units, there is some potential for the trading of these units. If they are traded, then both the people can be benefited from it, they can gain from the transaction, but it is not being allowed. As a result, we can see that monopoly results in some inefficiency in the market and leads to the deadweight loss. So how do we identify the deadweight loss? Basically, MR equal to MC का जो point है उससे एक line हम already बनाते हैं to identify the price. The small triangle to the right of that until this intersection point is basically the deadweight loss of monopoly. Essentially what you have to identify is all the units, all the output for which the demand curve is above the marginal cost curve and the units are to the right of Q star. Okay, so both these conditions have to be met. Demand curve should be above MC and the units should be to the right of Q star. अब तो जैसे ये वाला जो unit है, this is to the right of Q star, but इसमें MC is greater than the demand curve. It is above the demand curve. So this unit is not, it will not be included in the deadweight loss. While calculating the deadweight loss, we will just stop at the intersection of this. So similarly, just like we identify the deadweight loss diagrammatically from the tax when a tax is imposed, we are doing something similar over here. And again, note that the issue is this condition that is being met. So at the profit maximizing level of output, P is greater than MC, right? There is this wedge, there's this distance between the demand curve and the MC curve. They are not intersecting at this point, and this is the criterion which is resulting in this inefficiency. An important thing that I want to emphasize here is that note that we didn't say anything about profits while talking about inefficiency of the monopolist, right? So we are not saying that monopoly is inefficient because it earns profit. Okay, profits का कोई भी relation नहीं है efficiency के साथ. The only criterion we are concerned with is P equal to MC. Monopolist is only inefficient because the P equal to MC condition is not being met. When P is greater than MC, basically what we are saying is that the monopolist is not giving a true price signal to the consumers. So he is stopping his production, or he is stopping the selling at a point where the MC is still less than price. So he is saying कि मैं इससे ज़्यादा अगर आउटपुट प्रोड्यूस करूँगा तो मेरा मार्जिनल कॉस्ट बहुत बढ़ जाएगा, and that is greater, that will become greater than the price that the consumers want to pay. So that will not be profitable for me. As a result, I will not sell that unit. However, we have just seen that there are still some units which have a valuation to the consumer greater than the valuation to the producer. So in this way, in this manner, the monopolist is not giving a true price signal to the consumers and stopping production at an inefficiently low output level. Again, to reiterate, monopolist is not inefficient because it makes profit. If you recall, in the short run, the competitive firm can also earn profit. So there are three conditions. If P is greater than AC, then competitive firm earns profits in the short run. If P is less than AC, then it earns loss, or it incurs a loss. And if P is exactly equal to AC, then it's a break-even condition, zero profit, zero loss. However, whenever a competitive firm earns profit, we don't start calling it inefficient, right? Because we still look at the P equal to MC condition and say that competitive firm is still efficient because this condition is being met. So again, profits or efficiency का कोई relation ही नहीं है. The only thing we have to look at is this, whether the P equal to MC condition is being met. So in fact, we will consider a special case where the monopolist earns a high profit but still produces the efficient level of output. So it is possible that a profit-making monopolist can also be efficient. We will see this in one of the later videos. So let's just summarize the discussion. Monopolist is inefficient because at its profit maximizing level of output, P is greater than MC. So this means that the consumer's valuation of the next unit is greater than the producer's valuation of the next unit. This basically drives a wedge between the AR and the MC curves. So this becomes your P star and this is the Q star. So these two are not equal. P and MC are not equal, and we say that there is some lost surplus because trading of the next unit can benefit the society. It can improve the total surplus, but it is not allowed to do so. So whenever scope for improvement exists, it means that the current allocation is not efficient. So remember that example in which we were distributing 9 rupees even though we had 10 rupees. So there was a way to improve the allocation by giving that 1 extra rupee to any person. So monopolist basically reduces the social welfare by not signaling the true cost of production and producing a lower quantity than the perfectly competitive firm. So if the same output was being produced in a perfectly competitive industry, we would actually see this level of output to be sold, which is higher than the monopolist output. So perfectly competitive industry would sell where P is equal to MC, and all these extra units would be then sold and all the surplus would be obtained.